6:31. I will call the Finance Committee of September 12th, 2023 to order. And the first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the draft minutes of the August 22nd, 2023 Finance Committee meeting?
I move approval.
All right. Motion for approval made by Alder Wheeler. Discussion. Any corrections? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item, public appearances, non-agenda items. We do not have anyone registered in chambers or online. Thank you, Scott. Moving on to item 4, the Finance Director report. And we have a number of items besides the Treasurer's report. I'll turn the floor over to our Finance Director, Misty Dodge, for further explanation and details.
Thank you. So at first attachment that's included in the packet is the Treasurer's report for June 30th. So that's in there. And then the rest of those items that are in there are the 2022 annual reports for all of the TIDs. So law change in the last couple of years, we have to now file a report with the DOR that shows our status of all of our TIDs. So all of them have that required, that minimally required report included in there. For 3 of them, we also took it that one step further, where we engage with Ellers to kind of do the projections, that if all else stays as is, this is what the TID would look like as far as closeout and all of that. So those 3 of them that are more active have that additional supplemental report. And then we didn't include it for the TID 10 because the TID 10 amendment was approved that same night by Joint Review Board. So since Ellers did the work with that, we didn't want to pay for them to do it again. So all of that information is in there. I do not plan to go through them one by one. The Joint Review Board had a very thorough presentation from Greg, and then Mike Zimmerman and I chimed in a little bit as well. If you are interested in some of the details, that could be a great place to start. But I will pause in case there's questions before I go on to the rest of my report. No? Okay. The water rate case has been filed. We got the first round of questions back from the PSC, 8 pages worth of questions, so lots to respond to. Those responses are due at the end of the month, and then we'll be able to continue through the process. And then the big thing, of course, is the budget. So met with the mayor again today. Health insurance rates officially came out last night. So I think I mentioned that we had a tentative number of 7% in there. Statewide average for all local governments was 14%, and so we weren't sure kind of where we were going to fall. Worked in our favor for the city side. So the city's cost for single plans and family plans went up 7.2 or 7.3%. So really right around our target, which was helpful from a budget perspective. Yep. And then we did get confirmation from the Department of Revenue on how they're going to split that supplemental shared revenue that would have previously gone to the town. They are going to split it the way that we wanted to, which is by equalized value. So that's an additional $50,000 that we will get from that supplemental program. So that was good news. Other than that, budget stuff. So the numbers themselves have to go to the paper on Tuesday, and the book comes out next week, Friday. So y'all get an email from me with a link to the book and then the amendment form as well. You guys have been through this process before, so I won't go through too many of the next steps, but we're chugging right along. That is it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Misty. That is some good information, great information. Moving on to agenda number 5, review of bills. 5A, detailed review of all checks issued. Checks 125606 through 125677 for the period of August 16th to the 31st, 2023, totaling $1,744,444.93. Moving on to the next item, detailed review, which is 5B, detailed review of checks for $10,000 and above, August 16th to the 31st, 2023, totaling $1,636,748.11. Is there any questions before I move on? All right, moving on to 5C, detailed review of all ACH payments for the period of August 1st to the 31st, 2023, totaling $588,072.87. Questions from the committee? Hearing none, I'll move on to 5D. Detailed review of ACH payments for $10,000 and above for the period of August 1st through the 31st, 2023 totaling $573,248.47. Questions from the committee? All right, hearing none, we will move on to our action items, which is item number 6A. Do I have a motion to move Resolution R-158-23, Stoner Prairie Park Planning Design Services approval?
I move approval.
All right. Motion for approval made by Alder Gerhart. And who am I turning this over to?
Parks Director Endel.
All right. Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Randy. This is as we continue to implement the Stoner Prairie Park Master Plan. The services approval before you tonight has actually two components. The first component is going to be each of the individual amenities within the park, the shelter, the playground, the bike racks, the landscape. That's all going to have to be determined what those final designs are for those amenities, what they're going to look like. And once that's determined, then what will happen is EOR, they'll put together the construction documents, bid the project, and then help us manage the construction of the project. EOR, they were the firm that was hired to help us with the conceptual plan for Stoner Prairie, so they're very familiar with the project, and we're happy with their services.
Very good. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Discussion from the committee. Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us then to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to the next action item, which is 6B. Do I have a motion to move Resolution R-159-23, McKee Farms Park Tennis Court and Fence Replacement approval?
I move approval.
All right. Motion for approval made by Alder Wheeler. And Scott, are you addressing this one as well?
I can defer to Tim unless, of course, he wants me to take the lead on it.
Tim, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. Thank you. The McKee Farms Park tennis courts were constructed in the late 1990s and have had maintenance completed over the years, including crack filling, leveling course, and new colored surfacing. In 2023, the Common Council approved the City of Fitchburg ARPA and TID closure investment plan, which included a budget allocation for these tennis court reconstruction in the amount of $767,000. So as part of this project, staff evaluated 4 surfacing options with consideration of the life expectancy of each application. We also looked into the annual estimated maintenance costs for the estimated lifespan of the reconstructed courts, which was 50 years. And then we also evaluated the court surface playability, including safety for the players. And bids were advertised, and we received one bid, which was Parisi Construction. Parisi is currently doing the city's Lacey Road reconstruction project. We've had very good working relationship with them on that project. And then Parisi also did some identical work in tennis courts at the Rip Park in Wanakee. So we're looking for the Common Council to approve Parisi's contract in the amount of $996,576.50. With this resolution, there is also a budget amendment that is tied to this, and we're looking to transfer an amount in $276,000 from the TID closure fund into the project for this.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim. I'll ask if there are any questions from the committee. Alder Gerhart.
So do we know if this is sort of common? I mean, obviously, it came in above estimate. I know estimates are just that, estimates. Is this kind of what we're looking at for a tennis court replacement these days, $1 million to resurface?
In Fred Kolkman, he's also online. He's our tennis court consultant who helped us with this project. So Fred might be able to share a little bit about the current environment of this type of a project.
Good evening. Yeah, unfortunately, tennis court replacements has hit the $1 million mark. If you're looking for 5 or more courts, depending which surfacing that it is, but this is right in line with others that we have bid with the same product.
Yes, go ahead, Alder.
And then I've heard of a 50-year lifespan. That sounds like a long time. I mean, that would be great, but that sounds like a lot of promise. What are the odds that we actually can do that? Can we assess it along the way to make sure that we're going to maintain that lifespan?
Well, and if I might clarify, Gabriella, what we did is we looked at the different types of surfacing through a 50-year replacement cost, what we would spend for 50 years. Pro bounce is scheduled to last about 30 to 35 years. And actually, Alder Jester at the Board of Public Works indicated that really what it would be a 60-year that we would be doing with pro bounce. So at the end of the day, the annual allocation for the pro bounce to replace it would be a little bit less than what it says on that table. So in order to kind of compare apples to apples in regards to budget, we did it on a 50-year window, because the different surfaces have different replacement or life expectancies, if you would.
So there's going to be potentially, we wouldn't have to rebuild the courts next time, but we would just resurface the courts. Am I understanding that correctly?
We'd have to redo the pro bounce surfacing, but that would last for another 30 years. So instead of the 50, it would end up being 60.
Okay, because we're confident that the underlying surface that we're rebuilding is going to be more stable.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
So that's, excuse me, so that's the foundation that you're referencing.
Good.
For lack of better words, I mean, that's of a much higher standard, I guess is what I'm saying, than what we've worked with in the past.
It has a larger life expectancy,
Yep,
a longer life expectancy, that's for sure.
Okay. All right, very good. Any additional questions from the committee? Hearing none, I will place the motion before us then to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right. Thank you, Fred. Moving on to the next action item, which is 6C. Do I have a motion to move Resolution R-167-23, approving a Phase 2 expansion contract with B-Cycle for an additional B-Share services in the city of Fitchburg, and this is a direct referral.
I move approval.
All right, motion for approval made by Alder Gerhardt, and who is speaking to this? Misty?
I'll take this
All
one.
right.
So Deanna will be at the council meeting tonight if there's further questions, but for this committee's purpose, so the first phase of B-Cycle has been installed. Anecdotally, I could say I've seen a lot of people using it and enjoying it. There was an email that came out just a short while ago that has some statistics, some usage on it, but I haven't had a chance to actually read it or interpret it. So Deanna will be prepared to talk about that at council. But the plan was always to kind of do that as a pilot program and then go to a phase 2. So what's coming forward to you now is that contract with B-Cycle to implement the phase 2. So the cost to B-Cycle, 80% of it is covered by that TAP grant that council approved, and then the 20% is the local match. That local match was originally planned to be funded by the ARPA money. Included in this resolution is a budget amendment to take that out of TID closure money instead, because included in the contract is a possibility that we will get refunded some of that local match through sponsorships. And so since we might get some of that back over the next couple of years, the TID closure money is just a better bucket for that funding. So included in here is that flip to. The amount of the local match is actually less than what we had authorized under the ARPA money, but it's just because of the qualities of the program that we like to switch it around.
Very good. The T grant, again, can you clarify, where are those funds coming from?
So it's a TAP grant.
TAP grant, I'm sorry, not a T grant.
It's
Yeah.
a federal Department of Transportation grant that's
Yeah.
been passed through to the state and then passed through to us.
Mm-hmm.
So 80% of it comes there, and TAP stands for Transportation Alternatives Program.
Which is 80%, and I saw a total dollar amount from the itemized is around 380,000. So is it 80% of that 380 for the most part?
Yes, so there's the B-Cycle contract that you're authorizing, but then there's
Right.
also some costs that city staff will incur to put the actual concrete pads in. We'll get 80% of that back as well through the grant.
Okay, and then of course the local. The only reason I'm questioning is, and I brought it up to you in our one-on-one in the usage. I'm just curious as to the usage of phase one. I mean, we haven't seen any numbers on it, and I know the city has requested those numbers, but yet they haven't produced them. So, I mean, significant dollars are being spent. They may not be all of ours, but I'm just asking the question is all.
Yeah, and so those statistics did come through
Oh, they did?
in the last
Okay.
little bit. So I can forward those on to you, and Deanna will be able to talk to them.
Okay, very good.
About them at council,
Okay,
too.
a good program, though. Other questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, place the motion before us then to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to 6D, under action items. Do I have a motion to move Resolution R-168-23, Library Meeting Room AV Project?
I move approval.
All right, motion for approval made by Alder Wheeler. And Misty, are you speaking to this as well?
I am not. Jeremy Crosby
Jeremy.
is online to share the details of this one.
All right, Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Hello, Finance. I've got just one project here, and it is our AV project. We did a change order for this project with our meeting room and council chambers and added our AV project for the library that's in front of you. We didn't have any bids for the first time when we put out for the first project, and I apologize, I'm out of breath. Just walked a mile. And so the sum up here is that we're basically doing the same AV work that we did in the meeting room and the council chambers, and want to do that same thing in our large AV or our large meeting room with the same AV setup. So that is what is in front of you tonight. And I'm going to catch my breath.
Very good, thank you, Jeremy. Questions for Jeremy? Yes, Alder Gerhart.
Is this AV that Fact TV will use for broadcast, or is this public use within the library for rental?
Great question. It's actually a split project, and I should mention that a portion of this is being paid for by the library, and a portion is being paid for from the city. Fact TV will operate the equipment unilaterally. That's going to be in the space, so we'll have the audio system, the projector, and the AV system all is combined into one, and that is being split between both of us. So just like the two other meeting spaces, both can be used publicly and privately for Fact TV, for the staff, and for public.
Very good. Additional questions for Jeremy? All right, hearing none, I will place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you, Jeremy. Moving on to our next action item of 6E, do I have a motion to move Resolution R-176-23, amending the 2023 general fund budget, additional full-time firefighter and overtime overages?
I move approval.
All right, this is a direct referral. We have a motion for approval made by Alder Gerhart. And we have Chief Pulvermacher here this evening, so he is speaking to this item. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. One of the things that we're trying to address is some of the things that we saw this year with overtime. Our fire department staff on a career level doesn't have very much in the way of depth. So when we had a number of FMLA type sick leaves being used this year, it put us in a position where it required our career staff to work a significant amount of overtime. With this additional firefighter, it's addressing a couple of things. It's addressing the overtime usage that we use this year. It's supposed to reduce that. It won't eliminate it, but it will reduce it. And I think the other thing that's important to note is that this is part of the staffing plan that was put forth with the intent of being able to address the next 3 to 5 years. So this is not independent of that staffing study. This is in conjunction with to be able to implement some of the things that we've identified as needs. I can address some of those things as far as the staffing plan is concerned. I believe I've had the opportunity to talk to each of you. But if there's something specific to this, I would be happy to take the time to make sure that there's no confusion. In addition to that, I know that some have talked in the past about structural deficit. One of the things that we're looking at is some of the funds that are already available this year through our budget. that were identified as far as some things that we were able to address with the budget to have a certain amount of surplus. I'd hate to call it a surplus. It's a balance that would allow for some of these expenses. But in addition to that, with the overtime concern, Misty was able to identify some things that were available as a result of funds that have been received throughout this year. So although, yes, it is a structural deficit, with shared revenue next year, we do have the ability to support this next year and would continue to do that moving forward.
Very good.
And so if I may real quick, just to
Go ahead.
piggyback on what you were saying, because yes, structural deficits are obviously something I harp at a lot with you guys. So both of these, I feel like they're mitigated for 2024, which is why we're bringing it forward. And included in the resolution is a clause that council is directing the mayor to include that firefighter in the 2024 budget. So it has to be included per your direction if this resolution is approved.
Great, very good.
This also takes into account, we were in consultation with city administration, HR, finance. A lot of those discussions have been taking place over the past couple of months. The intent to bring this forward to you was actually intended for the last meeting, but we wanted to make sure that everything was appropriately addressed in advance to bringing it to Finance, Council, and Public Safety.
All right, very good. Questions from the committee? Alder Gerhart.
I just wanted to make a little comment for the public that's watching. We had a great conversation about the fire department needs long-term staffing, but also this in personnel just last week. And a statistic was shared about how there's been 8,000 hours of overtime in the fire department this year, and compared to just to date, so there will be more presumably. And last year there was 4,000 for the entire year of 2022. So the overtime has been a crisis. I mean, for a long time, but this year in particular. And you know, I've heard lots about the stress it's caused on our firefighters. I'm really happy that there's an option on the table to bring an additional person on before next year, because that, you know, long-term stress, I think we all can imagine. I can't empathize because I've never experienced that, but I can imagine how stressful that would be for the firefighters. I'm really pleased that you brought this forward and find a solution for it and get them some help before the end of the year. But I mean, that being said, there's a lot of things that we have to think about in terms of the paid on call difficulty, hiring, our 30-70 paid on call, our career versus paid on call model is maybe not going to be maybe not going to be sustainable long term. But that's all a different discussion. I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, I know that we've had that discussion in regards to the future of the Fitchburg Fire Department. I do see us as being able to support a combination type department for a long time. The ratio to which we have paid on call versus career right now is not likely to be sustainable over the long term. We do have a significant history of being able to train the fire service, not just our own firefighters, but those who ultimately get jobs elsewhere. It would be wonderful to be able to maintain that talent within the city instead of training them, making them marketable, and then having them go to other departments to make it a career. So I do see the value in training them through the paid on call ranks and then ultimately, hopefully, having positions that would be available as career members of this department. It does address the overall staffing plan and some of the concerns that we have with recruitment moving forward.
Very good, very good. Any other comments? Alder Gerhart.
Also want to ask, do we anticipate being able to fill this position in the near future?
Oh, good question. Actually, we have an active list right now. If it is approved by council, we could have this person actually in the station and staffing the vehicle by the 1st of October.
Great.
That's great. Yeah.
And then I have one more question too. I think the idea of using the overage from the building permits to cover staff overtime is a really elegant solution to a problem, right? Because that overtime is incredibly expensive, and also it's impossible for the fire department to absorb that. I just appreciate the work that you all did to make that happen, because this is obviously kind of an extraordinary situation, but it's good that we were able to use the flexibility that we had with that unexpected income.
Yeah, I think Missy put a lot of work into that, and I know we talked about this at personnel, but this is about as close as we get to contingency funding, right? I mean, how do we take care of a problem that isn't an ongoing problem, is an anomaly to an extent. Once again, it doesn't take care of all of our overtime issues, but it can help ease that pain a little bit.
All right, very good. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, I will place the motion to before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief. Do appreciate your time.
I will be here at council as well. I just have to go next door.
Okay, very good. Moving on to our next action item under number 6, and that's 6F, and it's our last action item. Do I have a motion to move Resolution R-178-23, authorizing the purchase of professional services for public outreach and education, Phase 1 and 2, and this is a direct referral.
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval made by Alder Wheeler, and since, Misty, you are the lone survivor here, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So this is that pre-approval we've talked about for the last couple of committee of the whole meetings now. So this is Mueller Communications. They are what I would call an industry leader in kind of the municipal referendum / funding gap education piece. So that's why we are proposing a sole source contract with them. This would be just for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 being that kind of information gathering, figuring out what our funding gap is, and Phase 2 being a community survey, which puts that information initially out to the public and say, we have this funding gap, how do you propose that we fill it? Like, what of these options are amenable to you as the taxpayer, as the ratepayer, that ultimately has to support those if we're going to continue with that level of service. So this contract includes just those 2 phases. If after that community survey goes out and the council does choose to go to referendum, there would be a Phase 3, which would have to be done as a change order to this contract. We didn't want to be presumptuous at this point. You know, we want to get that information out to the community first and make sure that this is the way that they are supportive of us moving before we just say, yep, we're doing a referendum. So that's why it's just those 2 phases now, with a 3rd phase to follow if needed. Included in here in the packet is a couple of other communities that they've helped and some of the information that they've done. Mueller is planning to be at our September committee of the whole meeting by Zoom to kind of talk about what their background is, and we'll hopefully have some sort of a timeline sketched out by then too to share with the committee of the whole. And then included in the resolution is a budget amendment. So the ARPA TID closure investment plan identified $100,000 for both this services as well as our financial advisors services if we go through this project. The budget amendment is for $125,000 to get all of those pieces done.
125 total.
Total between
Yes,
Mueller.
25 on top of the 100.
No, yes, 25 on top of the 100, yes.
So far, correct, okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I just want to make sure the dollars are clarified.
Absolutely, thank
Yeah.
you.
Alder Gerhart, you have a question?
Thanks. Do you know what do we have a specific timeline for when they expect it to do? I mean, we could talk about it in September as well, but I'm curious.
So we don't have a specific timeline outlined yet. So if council approves this contract tonight, Chad and I and Tracy Oldenburg plan to meet with Mueller to kind of talk about what this process looks like. And then we'll bring something hopefully to you in that September meeting. But they do outline in the documentation kind of a tentative timeline for what those different phases would be.
Yeah, I was saying 12 to 16
Phase 1
weeks.
would be September, and the options assessment October through January, and then the survey would be February to April. And then if we go to that Phase 3, that'd be May to August. And so we're still targeting that August 2024 referendum if we go to that stage. Wow. It'll go fast. It'll go real fast.
No question.
Yeah.
All right, additional questions for Misty? All right, hearing none, I will place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. Concludes the action items under number 6, and we will move on to announcements under number 7. Our next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for September 26, 2023. And are there any additional announcements from the committee? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right. Alder Wheeler has motion for adjournment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. We are adjourned.